The drive to my childhood home felt surreal. The familiar suburban neighborhood with its neat rows of colonial houses hadn't changed much, but I had. The last time I'd driven down this street, I was in a beat-up Honda Civic with exactly $827 in my checking account and a crushing weight on my shoulders. Now, as my Mercedes glided silently along the asphalt, that weight was gone, replaced by a calm certainty about who I was and what I stood for. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Next to me, Sophia scrolled through emails on her tablet, occasionally making notes about our upcoming sustainable housing project in Seattle. She glanced up as we turned onto my parents' street, her dark eyes finding mine. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but strong, just like her. "Never." "Better," I replied, and I meant it. The truth was, I wasn't here for revenge. Revenge is what small people seek when they've been wounded. Was here with a different purpose, to close a chapter, to set boundaries that should have been established years ago, and yes, to ensure that the people who had tried to sacrifice my future for my brother's past would never have the power to manipulate anyone again. My parents' house came into view, a sprawling two-story colonial with white columns and black shutters. Once it had seemed like a fortress of authority to me. Now it looked smaller somehow, diminished by time, or perhaps by my own growth. The lawn, once meticulously maintained by my father every Saturday morning, was patchy and overgrown. The flower beds my mother had showcased in neighborhood garden tours were choked with weeds. And there they were, standing on the porch as if posing for a Norman Rockwell painting gone wrong. My father, Richard Reynolds, his silver hair still precisely combed, but his shoulders stooped in a way I didn't remember. My mother, Patricia, her face tightened with the strain of keeping up appearances. And my younger brother Tyler, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his eyes darting between my car and his scuffed shoes. I brought the Mercedes to a smooth stop in the driveway, the quiet hum of its electric motor dying into silence. For a moment I just sat there, taking in the sight of the family tableau before me. 3 years ago, they had looked at me with expectation and entitlement. Today, their faces showed uncertainty, perhaps even fear. "Remember," Sophia said quietly, touching my hand, "whatever happened in the past, today is about the future." "Future," I nodded, squeezing her hand in return. She understood. It was one of the countless reasons I loved her. We stepped out of the car together, the soft thud of the doors closing punctuating the tense silence. Was dressed simply but impeccably dark jeans, a crisp white button-down, and a tailored blazer. Success didn't need to announce itself. With logos or flash, true confidence spoke in quieter ways. "Ethan," my mother called, her voice carrying that artificial brightness I knew so well. "And this must be Sophie, is it?" "Sophia," I corrected as we walked up the path. "Sophia Chen." My father's eyes widened slightly at the last name. Chen, as in Chen. National Bank, as in the institution currently holding their mortgage. That connection was clearly registering now. "It's lovely to finally meet you," my mother continued, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Ethan has told us, well, actually very little about you." "That's not surprising," Sophia replied, smoothly. "We tend to focus on the future rather than the past." The subtle jab wasn't lost on any of them. My brother Tyler let out an uncomfortable laugh that died as quickly as it came. "Well," my father said, clearing his throat and extending his hand, "let's not stand out here. Come in, come in." I shook his hand briefly, noting how his grip had weakened from the vice-like pressure I remembered. We followed them into the house, the familiar scent of my mother's cinnamon potpourri washing over me. The living room was just as I remembered, floral couches, carefully arranged family photos, the antique grandfather clock ticking away in the corner. But like the exterior, it all seemed smaller now, less imposing. "Can I get you something to drink?" my mother asked, her hands fluttering nervously. "Coffee? Tea? I made fresh lemonade this morning." "Water is fine," I replied. As she hurried to the kitchen, my father gestured toward the couch. "Please sit. It's good to see you, son." "Son?" The word hung in the air between us. Weighted with years of expectations and disappointments. Is it I asked quietly. He flinched slightly but recovered quickly. Of course it is. Your family. Family. That was always the trump card, wasn't it? Family duty, family loyalty, family obligation. It's the words that had been wielded like weapons against me throughout my life. My mother returned with a tray of waters, her hands trembling slightly as she set it down on the coffee table. Same coffee table where, 3 years ago, they had laid out the mortgage papers and changed my life forever. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. So, my father said, leaning forward with forced casualness, you mentioned on the phone that you wanted to discuss something important, something about the house. I took a sip of water, letting the moment stretch, remembering how they had once used silence to intimidate me. How the tables had turned. Yes, I finally said. I wanted to let you know in person that I've purchased your mortgage from Chen National Bank. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her throat, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she was shocked or distressed. My father's face drained of color. Tyler, who had been picking at a loose thread on his jeans, suddenly looked up, his eyes wide. You what? My father stammered. I've purchased your mortgage, I repeated calmly. As of yesterday, I own this house. Or more accurately, I own the debt against this house. But how could you? Why would the bank, my father, began looking bewildered. Sophia spoke up, her voice professional but warm. My father is the regional president of Chen National Bank, as I'm sure you know. While he couldn't simply give preferential treatment, he did alert Ethan when your loan was flagged for potential default after you missed 2 payments. My mother looked at my father in alarm. Missed payments? Richard, you told me everything. Was fine with the mortgage? My father's face flushed. It was just temporary, Patricia. I was going to catch up next month when Tyler's new job, Dad. Tyler interrupted, his voice strained. I told you 3 weeks ago that I didn't get that job. The family dysfunction was on full display now, the careful facade crumbling in real time. It was exactly what I had expected, yet it gave me no pleasure to witness it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about resolution. Let me be clear about why I'm here, I said, drawing their attention back. I'm not here to gloat or to punish you. I'm here because 3 years ago, you made a decision that altered the course of my life. And now I've made a decision that will alter yours. The weight of those words settled over the room. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I had long since learned that her tears were often tactical rather than emotional. You have to understand, Ethan, she began, her voice quavering. We were just trying to help your brother. The business opportunity he had was once in a lifetime, and the house had so much equity. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. Responsible? I echoed, keeping my voice level. Taking out a loan? Couldn't afford putting your home at risk, and then attempting to pass that burden to me without my consent was responsible. You were doing so well, my father interjected. At fancy firm in Chicago, your big salary. We knew you could handle it. It wasn't like we were asking for charity, Tyler added, finding his voice. It was just until my business took off. I looked at my younger brother, really looked at him. Tyler had always been the golden child, charming, athletic, popular, while I had been the serious one, the planner, the one who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Our parents had nurtured his dreams while tolerating mine. They had celebrated his mediocre achievements while taking my successes for granted. Your business, I said slowly. The luxury pet spa that had no business plan, no market research, and no qualified management. The business that you abandoned after 6 months when it got too difficult. Tyler had the grace to look ashamed, but only briefly. The market wasn't ready for my vision. The market, I replied, wasn't the problem. I turned back to my parents. Do you have any idea what you were really asking of me that day? You weren't just asking for money. You were asking me to put my own dreams on hold, my plans to start my own firm, my hopes of creating sustainable architecture that could change lives. You were asking me to spend the next 30 years paying for Tyler's failure. We're your family, my father said, as if that explained everything. Yes, you are, I agreed. and families should support each other's growth, not exploit each other's success. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folder, placing it on the coffee table between us. The same coffee table where they had ambushed me with their expectations 3 years earlier. "These are the new terms of your mortgage," I said. "I've restructured it. The interest rate has been lowered to match current market rates, which will reduce your monthly payment by about $800. My mother's face brightened slightly. "Oh, Ethan, that's so generous." I held up a hand to stop her. "I'm not finished. The mortgage is still in your names. You are still responsible for making the payments on time every month. There will be no familial discount, no special treatment. If you miss payments, the same consequences will apply as with any other loan." My father's brow furrowed. "But then why would you buy the mortgage at all? What do you get out of this?" "Closure," I said simply. "And protection." "Protection," my mother echoed. "Yes, protection from being used as your financial safety net. Protection from the emotional manipulation that has defined our relationship. For too long, I gestured around the room. This house, this mortgage, it's a symbol of choices made and responsibilities avoided. By owning the debt, I ensure that those choices remain where they belong with you." Tyler leaned forward, his expression calculating. "So you're still going to make us pay everything back, even though you could easily afford to?" "Yes," I interrupted firmly, "because this isn't about what I can afford. It's about what you need to learn." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence, not shocked, but contemplative. "There's one more thing," I added, reaching back into my jacket. I pulled out a small business card and handed it to my father. "This is the contact information for a financial advisor who specializes in helping families in your situation. Your first consultation is already paid for. What you do with the advice is up to you." My father stared at the card, turning it over in his hands as if it might transform into something else. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Had 3 years to think about it," I replied. "Right." And I had. 3 years of building my firm from nothing, of late nights and early mornings, of risking everything on my vision of architecture that could heal rather than harm the environment. 3 years of proving to myself that I didn't need their approval or their support to succeed. But to understand how I got to this moment of calm resolve, you need to know what happened 3 years ago. When my family decided that my future was worth sacrificing for my brother's past, I had just turned 29 and my career was finally gaining momentum. After years of working at a prestigious but traditional architecture firm in Chicago, I had recently been promoted to senior architect. My designs for energy-efficient buildings had caught the attention of industry publications, and I was being courted by several sustainable development companies. More importantly, I had been quietly saving for years, building a nest egg that would eventually allow me to launch my own firm, focused exclusively on sustainable architecture. Wasn't just a dream, it was a meticulously planned 5-year strategy with spreadsheets, contingency plans, and careful financial projections. Then came the phone call from my mother one Sunday evening. "Ethan, darling," she'd said, her voice carrying that special tone she reserved for when she wanted something. "We need you to come home next weekend. Is something important the family needs to discuss." "Is everyone okay?" I'd asked, immediately concerned. "Oh, yes, nothing like that. It's about Tyler's business opportunity. It's very exciting, but we need to talk about it as a family." I should have recognized the warning signs right then. In our family, exciting usually meant expensive, and as a family usually meant we expect you to contribute.
But I
went. Of course I went. Despite the complicated dynamics, they were my family, and some part of me still craved their approval. Their recognition that I too had value, that my path was also worthy of their support. I arrived that Saturday afternoon, pulling into the familiar driveway in my practical, fuel-efficient Honda. Tyler's gleaming BMW was already there, a graduation present from our parents when he'd finally finished college after 6 years and multiple major changes. The scene was carefully orchestrated, I realized later. The living room arranged just so, with family photos prominently displayed, my mother's best china set out with cookies and coffee. My father in a serious discussion, armchair by the fireplace. Ethan, my father had begun after minimal small talk. Your brother has an incredible opportunity. Tyler, lounging on the sofa with the casual confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world, grinned at me. It's going to be huge, bro. Luxury pet spas are the next big thing. People spend more on their pets than ever before, and there's nothing like this in the area. I've done research, he continued, though his idea of research I would later discover consisted mainly of scrolling through Instagram and noticing that pet influencers got a lot of likes. There's a perfect retail space available in the new shopping center, but I need to move fast to secure it. My father nodded approvingly. Tyler has a real entrepreneurial spirit, sees opportunities that others miss, what he didn't see. Apparently, were basic business fundamentals like market analysis, operational planning, or sustainable cash flow projections. That sounds interesting, I said cautiously. But what does this have to do with a family discussion? My mother reached over and patted my hand. Well, darling, starting a business requires capital. And as you know, your brother is just getting started in life. Unlike you, my father added, who's been established in your career for years now, you've always been so responsible with money, Ethan. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I still wasn't seeing the full picture. Are you asking me to invest in Tyler's business? My father cleared his throat. Not exactly. We found another solution, but we need your help to make it work. That was when they slid the mortgage papers across the coffee table. We've taken out a home equity loan, my father explained. The house is worth much more than when we bought it. So we were able to access substantial equity, $675,000. To be exact, that's enough to get the pet spa up and running with all the premium features, Tyler interjected excitedly. Heated floors, organic grooming products, a pet cafe with gourmet treats. It's going to be Instagram heaven. I stared at the papers, then back at my parents. You're taking out a second mortgage on your house for this? It's an investment in your brother's future, my mother said firmly. And this is where you come in, my father continued. The monthly payments on this loan are substantial, $4,200 a month. With our retirement income, that's going to be difficult for us to manage until Tyler's business becomes profitable. Which will be soon, Tyler assured me. 6 months, a year tops. My father nodded as if this wildly optimistic timeline was a certainty. We need you to help with the payments in the meantime, given your salary and your lack of other financial commitments. You should be able to handle it easily. My lack of other financial commitments was their way of dismissing my own dreams and plans. In their eyes, because I wasn't married with children, my resources were essentially up for grabs. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You've taken out a massive loan against your house to fund Tyler's untested business idea. And now you want me to make the payments on it? Not forever, my mother quickly added. Just until the pet spa takes off. But if it doesn't take off, the question hung in the air. My father's expression hardened slightly. That's not the kind of support your brother needs right now, Ethan. He needs positivity, encouragement. What he needs, I countered, is a business plan, market research, and experience in the industry he's entering. Has he ever even worked at a pet grooming facility? Tyler rolled his eyes. I'm not going to be the one washing the dogs, bro. I'm going to be the owner. I'll hire people for that stuff. It's what management experience. My mother intervened before Tyler could. Respond, Ethan, please. This isn't about interrogating your brother's business acumen. This is about family supporting each other. Your father and I have always supported both of you in your endeavors. I almost laughed at that. My endeavors had been largely self-funded. My college tuition had been covered by scholarships I'd earned through academic excellence. My first apartment security deposit had come from my own savings from summer jobs. Meanwhile, Tyler had received a new car for each of his major life events, plus constant financial bailouts whenever his latest passion project fizzled out. I'm sorry, I said, pushing the mortgage papers back across the table. Can't do this. Can't or won't? My father asked, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. Both, I replied honestly. I have my own plans for my future, my own business I want to start someday. I've been saving for years. What you're asking would derail everything. I've worked for So your brother's dreams aren't as important as yours? My mother asked, her voice trembling with just the right amount of emotional manipulation. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I wasn't consulted about this loan before you took it out. I didn't agree to be responsible for payments on a debt that directly benefits Tyler, but not me. And frankly, I don't think this business plan is viable. Tyler stood up, his face flushed with anger. Just say it, Ethan. You've always been jealous of me. You've always resented that, Mom. And Dad loved me more. Tyler, my mother gasped, though she didn't actually deny his claim. My father leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Ethan, this is your duty as part of this family. Your brother has a chance to make something of himself, to build a legacy. All we're asking is that you contribute to that legacy. About my legacy? I asked quietly. Your what? My father looked genuinely confused. My legacy. My vision. My future. He waved a dismissive hand. You draw buildings for other people? You've got a good, stable job. Be grateful for that, and help your brother achieve something special. In that moment, everything crystallized. For me, the pattern that had defined our family dynamic for as long as I could remember suddenly became blindingly clear. Tyler was the dreamer whose potential must be nurtured at all costs. I was the responsible one whose purpose was to facilitate those dreams even at the expense of my own. No, I said, standing up. I won't do it. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, please. If you don't help, we could lose the house. Then don't take out a loan you can't afford, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotional storm brewing inside me. Don't gamble your retirement security on a business that has no concrete plan for success. It's not a gamble, Tyler shouted. You're just too narrow-minded to see the vision. My father stood now, too, his face flushed with anger. Never thought I'd see the day when my own son would turn his back on his family. After everything we've done for you, I looked around the room at my father's self-righteous anger, my mother's tactical tears, my brother's entitled indignation, and suddenly felt a strange calm descend over me. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. The question seemed to shock my father. What? What have you done for me that justifies me putting my entire future on hold to fund Tyler's pet spa fantasy? We raised you, he sputtered. We put a roof over your head. We gave you every opportunity. No, I corrected him. You provided the bare minimum expected of parents, and I'm grateful for that. But my scholarships paid for my education. My hard work built my career. My discipline created my savings. And now you want to take that away because you've already spent all you're willing to on Tyler. A heavy silence fell over the room. I could see my words landing, not as the wake-up call I hoped for, but as confirmation of what they already believed, that I was selfish, unfeeling, not a true member of the family. If that's how you feel, my father said finally, his voice cold, perhaps you should leave. Richard, my mother began, but he cut her off with a gesture. No, Patricia. If Ethan doesn't understand family duty by now, he never will. Looked at each of them one last time, searching for any sign that they understood my perspective, that they recognized the fundamental unfairness of what they were asking. There was none. Goodbye, I said simply, and walked out the door. As I drove away from my childhood home that day, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Grief for the family relationship I had always hoped for, but never truly had. Anger at the blatant favoritism that had shaped our dynamics, but also, surprisingly, relief. The weight of trying to earn their approval, of contorting myself to fit their expectations, had been lifted. I was free. What I didn't know then was that this moment of painful clarity would become the catalyst for the greatest transformation of my life. Sometimes, the most devastating rejections lead to the most powerful redirections. And as I pulled away from my parents' house that day, I had no idea that 3 years later, I would return not as the dutiful son they had tried to exploit, but as someone entirely new, the architect of my own destiny. Driving away from my childhood home that day, I felt oddly light despite the weight of what had just happened. The Honda's engine hummed as I merged onto the highway, heading back to my apartment in Chicago. Rain began to spatter against the windshield, matching my mood, not sad exactly, but cleansed. as if something toxic had been washed away. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the passenger seat. My mother, then my father, then Tyler. I let it ring. Whatever emotional manipulation they were preparing could wait. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over their expectations, and the feeling was both terrifying and exhilarating. I pulled into a rest stop when the rain became too heavy to drive safely. Sitting in my car with the sound of raindrops drumming on the roof, I allowed myself to really think about what had just happened and what it meant for my future. The 5-year plan I'd meticulously crafted, 2 more years at the firm building, my portfolio and connections, then launching my own sustainable architecture practice, was still intact. My parents hadn't succeeded in derailing it, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. The invisible tether that had always pulled me back to seeking their approval had snapped. I was truly on my own now, and instead of feeling abandoned, I felt liberated. I reached for my phone and called the one person who had always seen me clearly. "Maya, it's Ethan. I need some perspective." Maya Chen had been my closest friend since college, where we'd bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared obsession with sustainable design. She'd gone on to become an environmental engineer, and unlike my family, had always understood my vision for architecture that worked with nature rather than against it. "Perspective is my specialty," she answered. "What's going on?" I told her everything: the ambush meeting, the mortgage, the expectation that I would sacrifice my future for Tyler's pet spa fantasy, my refusal, and the fallout. "Wow," she said when I finished. Just wow. I mean, I knew your parents played favorites, but this is next-level exploitation. Am I wrong, though? I asked, needing the reassurance. Should I have just helped them? It's family, after all. "Ethan Reynolds," Maya said firmly. "Listen to me carefully. Family supports each other. Family doesn't demand one member sacrifice everything while another risks nothing. What they asked wasn't fair, and you were right to say no," her words settled something in me. "Thanks, Maya. I needed to hear that. So what now?" she asked. I took a deep breath, watching the rain begin to ease up outside my windshield. Now I accelerate the plan. No more waiting. Life's too short to postpone the things that matter. When I returned to Chicago that evening, I didn't waste time dwelling on what had happened. Instead, I channeled all my energy into action. Stayed up until 3 a.m. working on a business plan for my own architecture firm, one that would specialize in carbon-neutral, sustainable building designs. One researched small business loans, potential clients, office spaces. By morning, I had a clear path forward, riskier than my original 5-year plan, but also potentially more rewarding. The next week was a blur of focus and determination. I scheduled meetings with potential investors, refined my portfolio to highlight my sustainable design work, and gave notice at my firm. My boss, a traditional architect who had nevertheless respected my innovative approaches, was surprised but supportive. "I always knew you'd strike out on your own eventually," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "I just thought we'd have you for a few more years." What prompted the change in timeline? I considered giving him a sanitized version of events, but opted for honesty instead. Family situation made me realize that waiting for the perfect time is just another form of fear. There's never a perfect time to take a leap. He nodded thoughtfully. "Well, Ethan, their loss is your gain, I suppose. And I hope you'll remember us when you're looking for collaborators on larger projects." That vote of confidence meant more than he could know. For someone who had grown up starved for validation, having my professional abilities recognized felt like water in a desert. The first few months of establishing my own firm, Reynolds Sustainable Architecture, were exactly as challenging. As I'd anticipated, I worked out of a tiny converted storage space I rented cheaply from a client, using a folding table as a desk and sleeping only 4 hours a night. I took on small residential projects to build my portfolio while pitching my vision to developers who might take a chance on larger commercial projects. Most days, I subsisted on coffee and determination. Some nights, when the isolation and pressure became overwhelming, I questioned everything. Had I made a terrible mistake? Should I have stayed in my safe, well-paying job? It's my vision of sustainable architecture that prioritized both human well-being and environmental health just a naive fantasy? During one particularly low moment, after 3 potential clients had rejected my proposals in a single day, I found myself staring at my phone, my father's number on the screen. One call, one apology, one agreement to help with Tyler's business. And I could crawl back to the safety net of family, dysfunctional as it was. My finger hovered over the call button.
Oh, yes.
Then my phone buzzed with an incoming email.
Absolutely.
I switched screens to check it and felt my heart rate accelerate. It was from Green Path Developments, a small but respected company known for environmentally conscious building projects. I had pitched to their CEO weeks earlier and heard nothing back. Mr. Reynolds, the email read, your vision for carbon neutral office spaces aligns perfectly with our upcoming Oakland project. Your innovative approach to balancing sustainability with practical workplace needs impressed our entire team. Can we meet next week to discuss the possibility of a collaboration? I set the phone down, my hands actually shaking. This wasn't just a client, this was validation of everything I believed in. I looked around at my tiny makeshift office. With its architectural drawings pinned to walls and sustainable material samples stacked in corners, and felt a surge of renewed purpose. I deleted my father's number from the screen without making the call. The Green Path project became my firm's first major commission, designing a 4-story office building that would produce as much energy as it consumed, using recycled and sustainable materials throughout. The budget wasn't huge, but the opportunity to prove my concepts worked at scale was priceless. I threw myself into the project with everything I had, refining every detail until the design was perfect. When construction began 6 months later, I visited the site daily, collaborating closely with the builders to ensure my vision was executed properly. The project consumed my life, but in the most fulfilling way possible. During this intense period, I received occasional texts from my mother, surfacely vowel, messages asking how I was, never acknowledging the mortgage situation or our last interaction. I responded politely but briefly. Tyler had apparently opened his luxury pet spa. With the mortgage money, and according to my mother's carefully curated updates, it was doing wonderfully. I didn't ask for details, and she didn't offer any. I suspected the reality was less rosy than she portrayed. The Green Path building was completed 18 months after I left my family's house, and it exceeded even my own expectations. The integration of solar panels, natural ventilation systems, rainwater collection, and locally sourced sustainable materials created a workspace that was not only environmentally responsible, but also beautiful and functional. When the project was featured in Architectural Digest with the headline, "The Future of Workplace Design is Green," Reynolds redefined sustainable architecture. My phone exploded with congratulatory messages from colleagues and friends. Notably absent were any from my family, though I knew my mother followed architectural publications religiously. The recognition from that project led to more clients, which allowed me to hire staff, move to a proper office, and begin to build the firm I had always envisioned. Each new project pushed the boundaries of sustainable design a little further, and each success built my reputation in the industry. It was at a green building conference in San Francisco that I met Sophia Chen, brilliant, passionate, and refreshingly direct. She was presenting research on sustainable financing models for eco-friendly construction projects. Her presentation was the perfect blend of hard data and visionary thinking, and I found myself lingering afterward to ask questions. So basically, she said, after listening to my thoughts on integrating financial planning with sustainable design, "You're saying architects need to be economists too?" "Not exactly," I replied, "but I think we need to speak each other's languages. The best sustainable design in the world won't get built if it can't be financed responsibly." She smiled, a spark of interest in her eyes. "Most architects I meet just want to talk about their artistic vision. They leave the money part to someone else." I learned the hard way that ignoring the financial reality is a quick path to having no path at all, I said, thinking of how close I'd come to losing everything. We ended up talking until the conference center staff politely informed us they were closing. Our conversation continued over dinner, then coffee, then more dinners. Sophia was unlike anyone I'd ever met. the daughter of a banker and an environmental scientist. She had grown up understanding both worlds and was determined to bridge them. Sustainable development isn't just about technology or design. She told me during one of our early conversations, it's about creating new financial models that value long-term environmental benefits as much as short-term profits. Her perspective challenged and expanded my own thinking, and somewhere between heated debates about carbon offsets and late-night walks discussing biomimicry and architecture, we fell in love. What I didn't know during those first few months was that Sophia's father was James Chen, regional president of Chen National Bank, the same bank that held my parents' mortgage. It wasn't something she had deliberately concealed. It simply hadn't come up in our conversations, which focused far more on our shared vision for the future than on our family backgrounds. When I finally did learn about her connection during a dinner where she casually mentioned her father's position, I was momentarily stunned. "Is something wrong?" she asked, noticing my expression. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Your father's bank holds my parents' mortgage, the one they took out for my brother's business, the one I refused to pay." Sophia set down her fork, her expression thoughtful. It's an interesting coincidence. Does it bother you?" "No," I said after considering it. "Should it?" She smiled. "No, my father's work and our relationship are entirely separate things. Though I will say, he'd probably love your perspective on sustainable financing for architectural projects." Meeting James Chen a few weeks later was nothing like meeting my own father. Richard Reynolds had always evaluated me based on how well I fulfilled his expectations. James Chen seemed genuinely interested in understanding my thoughts and vision on their own merits. Over dinner at his home, a modernist structure with its own impressive sustainability features, we discussed everything from renewable energy integration in building design to the financial metrics that could better account for environmental benefits. "The problem," James said thoughtfully, "is that our financial systems were designed in an era when natural resources seemed infinite and climate impact wasn't considered. We're trying to solve 21st century problems with 19th century financial tools." "Exactly," I agreed. "And that disconnect makes truly sustainable projects seem financially non-viable when evaluated by traditional metrics." His eyes lit up. "What we need is a new framework entirely, one that quantifies the long-term value of sustainability features rather than just their upfront costs." By the end of the evening, he had offered to connect me with several developers who were looking for architects with exactly my expertise, and I had gained not just a valuable professional contact, but someone who respected my vision in a way my own father never had. As my relationship with Sophia deepened and my firm continued to grow, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Tyler's pet spa was struggling. The Instagram heaven he had envisioned had failed to attract the clientele he'd expected, and his inexperience with basic business operations was showing. I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a quiet sadness at the predictability of it all. Then came the day, almost 2 years after I had walked out of my parents' house, when Sophia came to my office with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," she said, closing the door behind her. "And I want to be clear that I learned this through official channels at the bank, not through any family connection." I set down the sustainable materials catalog I'd been reviewing. "What is it?" "Parents' mortgage is at risk of foreclosure. They've missed several payments, and the bank is initiating proceedings." I absorbed this information silently. Part of me had been expecting this news eventually. Another part, the part that had been raised to believe family, always came. First felt a pang of guilt. "There's more," Sophia continued. "According to the bank's assessment, Tyler's business is essentially bankrupt. He's been operating at a loss since the 3rd month. Your parents have been using their retirement savings to keep it afloat, which is why they can't make the mortgage payments." Closed my eyes briefly, imagining my parents depleting their security to prop up Tyler's failing venture, just as they had expected me to do. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally.
"Oh, what are you thinking?"
Sophia asked gently. It was a complex question. What was I thinking? That my predictions had been correct. That my parents were facing the natural consequences of their choices. That despite everything, I still felt a pull to help them. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that some lessons have to be learned the hard way." And some patterns need to be broken definitively, Sophia added, understanding immediately. Over the next few days, I considered my options carefully. I could do nothing and let the foreclosure proceed. I could offer to help with the payments, essentially giving in to what they had demanded 2 years earlier. Or I could take a different approach entirely. After much reflection and several long conversations with Sophia, I made my decision. I contacted my attorney and set in motion a plan to purchase my parents' mortgage from Chen National Bank. James Chen, when approached through proper channels, ensured the transaction was handled ethically and professionally. There was no preferential treatment, but he did make sure the bank considered my offer seriously. The purchase was completed quietly and efficiently. And that brings us back to the living room, to the moment I told my parents that I now owned their mortgage, as the implications of what I'd done sank in. My father's expression shifted from shock to something more complex, perhaps the beginnings of understanding. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual authority. "Are you going to foreclose? Force us out?" "No," I replied. As I said, "I have restructured the loan to make the payments more manageable. You will keep the house provided you make those payments, and if we cannot," my mother asked, her voice small, "then the same thing will happen that would happen with any bank. The difference is I will ensure you have options for downsizing that preserve your dignity, but there will be consequences." Tyler, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "I can sell the spa equipment. It is not worth much now, but it might help with a few payments while I find a job." It was the first responsible thing I had heard him say in years. "That would be a start," I agreed. My father stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the unkempt lawn. His shoulders were hunched, his posture defeated. When he turned back, his face showed something I had never seen before: humility. "I do not understand why you are doing this," he said. "After how we treated you, why not just let the bank take the house? Why get involved at all?" It was a fair question, one I had asked myself repeatedly during the process of acquiring their mortgage. "Because this is not about revenge," I said simply. "It is about breaking a pattern that has damaged this family for too long." "What pattern?" my mother asked, though I think she already knew. "The pattern where Tyler takes risks without consequences. Where you enable him at everyone else's expense, where I am expected to be the safety net, but never the priority." My father flinched slightly but did not argue. "By owning this mortgage, I continued, I am ensuring that everyone in this family faces the real consequences of their choices. No more, no less. It is not punishment. It is clarity." As I spoke these words, I realized how much I had changed in the years since I had left. The angry, hurt son who had driven away that day would have wanted revenge. The man I had become wanted something more: valuable freedom from the dysfunctional cycles that had defined our family for generations. "We never meant to hurt you, Ethan," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "We just thought you were always so capable, so strong. We thought you could handle it." "That is the problem," I replied gently. "You saw my strength as a resource to be used, not as something to be respected and supported." The truth of that statement hung in the air between us. For perhaps the first time, my parents were seeing me not as the dutiful son or the family safety net, but as a person in my own right, someone whose dreams and boundaries deserved respect. Tyler slumped back on the couch, running his hands through his hair. "I really thought the pet spa would work," he said quietly. "I thought I would be able to pay it all back myself with interest. I never imagined." "That is because you were never taught to imagine consequences," I told him, not unkindly. "You were taught that someone would always clean up your messes, usually me." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I am sorry, Ethan. I really am." It was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from my brother. It was not enough to erase years of entitlement and favoritism, but it was a start. "So where do we go from here?" my father asked, his voice subdued. "Forward," I said, separately but maybe eventually with more honesty. Sophia, who had been quietly observing the family dynamics, spoke up. "The financial advisor on that card Ethan gave you is excellent. She specializes in helping families rebuild after financial setbacks. She can help you create a sustainable plan for managing the mortgage payments and rebuilding your retirement savings." My mother nodded gratefully, clutching the business card as if it were a lifeline. As we prepared to leave, my father hesitated, then asked, "Your company, the one in the magazine?" "It is doing well." It was the first time he had ever acknowledged my professional success. "Yes," I replied. "We're designing a zero-carbon housing development in Seattle next month. And we just won the contract for the new Renewable Energy Research Center at the university." That is impressive, son." "Son." The word sounded different now, less possessive, more respectful. "Thank you," I said simply. As Sophia and I walked back to the car, the afternoon sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn. My mother called after us from the porch. "Ethan, will you come back sometime? Maybe for dinner?" I turned to look at her, this woman who had stood by silently when my future was nearly sacrificed, who had enabled patterns of favoritism that had damaged both her sons in different ways, but who was also undeniably my mother. "Maybe," I said, "but not yet. We all need time to adjust to this new reality." She nodded, understanding that it was more than she deserved, but less than she hoped for. We drove away. Sophia glanced at me. "You okay?" I considered the question carefully. Was I okay? The confrontation had been difficult, emotionally draining. But it had also been necessary, a cauterization of an old wound that had festered too long. "Yes," I said finally. "For the first time in my relationship with my family, I think I actually am okay." And I was not because everything was resolved or because all the hurt had magically disappeared, but because I had finally established the boundaries I needed to protect myself while still offering what help I could on my own terms. I had broken the pattern. As we pulled onto the highway heading back toward the life we were building together, I felt lighter. The burden of family obligation without family support had been lifted. The path ahead was clear, unobstructed by guilt or unrealistic expectations. Sometimes true freedom comes not from cutting ties completely, but from redefining them on healthier terms. And sometimes the most powerful response to those who would exploit your strength is to use that same strength to reshape the entire dynamic. That day, driving away from my childhood home for the second time, I knew that whatever relationship I might eventually rebuild with my family, it would be on foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation. And that was a foundation that could actually support something worth building. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Let's click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.